Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another live episode of Keeping Karlsson, a late planned show. Very happy to be here. We've got a bit of fun content to talk about. Before we get into it, Brian's going to do a quick ad, and then we're going to start.
All right. Hi, everyone. Here we go. Oh, how's my microphone? I didn't actually check before.
We are live now, but that's
yeah,
good.
I know, but
ask that.
Just gotta make sure.
I
Okay,
think you're good. By the way, I think you should give the link, our link, keepingkarlsson.com/fanduel. I think you should.
Okay. What if you don't know how to spell FanDuel?
Say how.
Well,
sure.
I think it's shorter to explain how to spell Carl.
I think everyone knows how to spell FanDuel.
Maybe I'm gonna give the FanDuel link to start, and then when we do the reminder at the end of the show, we'll include our link.
Let's go.
All right. This episode of Keeping Karlsson is sponsored in part by FanDuel. Hockey's back, which means daily fantasy hockey on FanDuel. FanDuel has something for everyone, including new contests every day starting at just $1. And now you can take on Elon and I in our brand new Keeping Karlsson Listener League. Our contests open each Wednesday and run each Thursday beginning this week. Check out fanduel.com/KARL for all the details. See you there.
All right, let's do this. Yeah! Yes! Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who at one point owed Eric Karlsson in their keeper pools. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski. With me, as always, fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Combe.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for, it's like the night before, I don't know, Christmas, a party. We're so close. We're right on the precipice of a brand new NHL season with all new data points. Forget the games. We're just going to have new numbers to look at, which is so exciting. By the way, speaking of party, keepingkarlsson.com/party. We're having one in Toronto, Season 5 launch, October 14th at Watson's. Go to that site I just said and count yourself, RSVP, so we can make sure that if we have any swag, we have enough for everybody. Wink, wink.
Ooh, little tease there. Yeah, keepingkarlsson.com/party will take you to the Facebook event. Yeah, join us October 14th. It'll be fun. Okay, so I know last episode I teased that we would be broadcasting our live Tier 1 Cupful auction, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron League auction draft, and that would be an episode. So we did record the auction draft last Saturday at 1 p.m. It was a lot of fun. And though it was kind of like a bit crazy, like a few things happened that we weren't expecting, such as a couple people not showing up for the auction, or I guess one person didn't show up. And so the audio has a lot of us scrambling and trying to find someone to take their place, and someone else had internet issues. At one point, our amazing guest, Jeff Good, his internet went down, and so I was just rambling for a bit. So we decided maybe that wouldn't be good for a proper episode of the show. But if you want to listen to the audio of the live draft, you still can, keepingkarlsson.com/live draft. Or if you want to follow along with the results or just see the results of the auction draft, check out keepingkarlsson.com/draft results. So once again, keepingkarlsson.com/live draft to listen to the audio, keepingkarlsson.com/draft results to see the results. We'll post them in the show notes for the show. So if you're on your phone or on our website, just scroll down. You'll see those links. But anyways, Brian, we decided we're going to give a real normal episode here right before the season. There's quite a lot to talk about. There's a lot that's happened in the preseason. You weren't even here for the last episode. We had that awesome interview with Dom Luchichin talking about his projection spreadsheet. So I think it's time we cover some of the latest and greatest news right before we get into the actual season next week. Brian, before we start, maybe let's set the table a little bit. We still don't know. Like, we're going to talk about a lot of like line combinations and injury news and all this stuff, but it's like we don't even really know the line combinations, right? Like, we're looking at what was the last line at the last practice, or like what were they going with in the last preseason game. And we'll try to speculate, what this could mean for the players if they stay on those lines. But keep in mind, take everything we say with a grain of salt, because we'll find out the real line combinations to start the season on Wednesday. And that's when we'll be able to start actually being able to really pinpoint which players we should go for. So this episode is going to be more about who you should maybe keep your eye on.
Yeah, you're going to notice this episode is a little different. I'm not going to quote one number from the preseason. It's not just going to happen. So if you want those shot attempt numbers or IPP or whatever you want crunched that you normally get in the regular season, it's not happening. And that's meaningful. Like there's purpose behind that, because if you're making any decisions based on preseason performance, well, I mean, you could be on the right track, but there's so many red herrings that we're just not going to go there. What we see in the preseason that's the most relevant, especially now that it's over and looking at the last 1 or 2 games after final cuts have been made, is to see what the lines looks like for the last time before opening night, which is really where we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be looking heavily at deployment situations rather than any of those, what I think are mostly meaningless numbers that did come out through preseason play.
Right. So you're saying that just because Connor McDavid led all of preseason scoring, that doesn't mean he's going to lead the preseason scoring in the regular season. Noted. I might bring up a couple numbers along the way, just to piss you off. Okay, but let's start actually with a big free agent signing today. It finally happened. Jaromir Jagr has a home. He signed with the Calgary Flames. There were so many rumors when Robbie Fabry went down with injury, which we'll get to in a little bit. There was a lot of rumors that Jagr would go to St. Louis. Everyone was speculating, oh man, what if he's on the top power play, top line with Tarasenko? But no, he goes to Calgary, and you know what? That is a good spot for him. You would think, just looking at their roster, like the roster they were going with in their preseason games, they had Gaudreau and Monahan with Michael Furland as the third piece, and like Michael Furland doesn't scream top liner, so why not bring in Jaromir Jagr and see what he could do? Sure, he's 45 years old, but he last year had 46 points in 82 games. You know, maybe not especially fantasy relevant, but definitely nothing to sneeze at. Year before, 66 points in 79 games. So he's shown that in the right situation, he can definitely still produce. And I feel like if he gets on the top line in the top power play with Gaudreau and Monahan, that seems like a pretty good right situation. But of course, the question is, will he get there? And Brian, do you think if he gets there, is he fantasy relevant? Should people be rushing to pick him up in free agency right now?
If he gets there, he's probably...
Or
did you have more to say?
Sorry. I did have more to say, and also I should mention we're not planning on editing this episode because it's just a chill Monday night episode. So you're going to hear all of our flubs just like that one. I was just going to say that also maybe if you haven't drafted yet, is he worth a late round draft pick?
Please tell me you'll edit that part out.
No, go.
Okay. Well, is he worth a late round? Okay, well, the questions are related that you just asked. I probably would have gotten to that answer even if you hadn't added it in. Jagr is probably worth about as much as he was, I don't know, around the second half of last season, when he was more or less a guy who would be at the top of a free agent pile in some like middling depth leagues and really not even considered in shallow leagues. Even with good deployment last year, he had really slowed down. I'm hoping that he can make himself somewhat worthwhile. The problem last year was that he was pretty inconsistent, even with shot taking. Like, you never knew if you were going to get 0 shots or 2 shots. A lot of the speculation right now is Jagr someone who can step into Hudler's spot to reunite Gaudreau and Monahan back on the kid line? And I'd say the answer is probably not, or at least not in the same way. Jagr doesn't have Hudler's playing style exactly. He's not as speedy as he might need to be to keep up with those two. But maybe he still has some craftiness left that'll help him open up some offensive opportunities for them, the way Yuri Hudler was also able to. But for now, to start the year, I'm still mostly seeing the expectation that Michael Furland holds on to his spot. Maybe the most anonymous first liner in the league, Michael Furland. He had that spot last season. Actually, he and Alex Chiasson were the most common line mates when Gaudreau and Monahan played together, which, remember, wasn't even a given for swaths of the year, especially as they struggled early on. They got split up. Anyway, going back to Jagr, seems like a middle six guy at worst, which really doesn't offer much fantasy relevance. So saying at worst doesn't emphasize a point too much. He does have upside to take turns on the top line, but he's not that fantasy relevant. If he's not on the top line, not on the top power play, as fun as it would be to own Jaromir Jagr, I'm definitely in a wait and see position on him. I'd rather have, like we have some of these rookies coming up who have the opportunity to make a splash. I'd rather take a gamble on them than, hope for 45 points from Jagr.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we'll get to a lot of these guys later on. Maybe I could play a little, would you rather have this guy or Jagr as we go? But yeah, I agree. Considering he was playing with Barkov and Huberdeau and didn't have the greatest season last year, and those are really good players. Though I guess there were injuries and Huberdeau was out and Marsh so was there. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Jagr is getting up there in age, but in the right situation. If you want to take a flyer on him, it wouldn't be the worst decision you could make. Just be ready to drop him quickly if, like you say, he's not on the top line. Okay, some more news. This is probably not too big a deal, but apparently Ghost Bear went down with an upper body injury in the last Philly preseason game. So at first people were like starting to freak out. You know, there was no word on how bad the injury was. And obviously people were thinking, oh, now you definitely need to draft Provorov even higher than where you would have before, since now that looks like that would be a prime spot for Provorov to jump in on the top power play. Ghost Bear did travel to their first game in San Jose, so probably he's going to be fine. Maybe if he doesn't play in that game, he'll play a little later. But just wanted to let people know that maybe Provorov will get a chance on the top power play. If, let's say, Ghost Bear misses even just a couple of weeks, it'll be nice to see what Provorov could do in that situation. I wonder if he could steal the job, just like Ghost Bear did from Mark Streit when he got injured all those years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, although, I mean, it feels like it's been an eternity since Mark Streit was quarterbacking the Philly power play. That was a different situation, though. Streit was probably declining, even if I refused to admit it at the time. And looking at the fact that Ghost traveled, maybe he's fine, or at least he's fine enough to give it a shot. Don't know. Not going to speculate too heavily. I'm just going to say, as far as Provorov taking a spot, I think there's always a chance, but it's really Ghost's job to lose, which he did, by the way, briefly last season. So, like, it's not entirely out of the question, but let's just say I'm more a Ghost Bull than Ghost Bear about his chances to improve on last year's disappointments.
Did you just come up with that, like, in the past hour?
Yes.
That's very impressive. Okay. But keep in mind, though, if you're in a Bangers and Mash league that's counting your hits and blocks, Provorov is someone you want to draft because he helps you in those peripheral categories. He's going to be pretty decent on offense, even if he doesn't get on the top power play. And there's that little chance. So I do think Provorov does, I like the idea that he gets a chance to show what he could do on the top power play, even if it won't last for that long. Okay, let's go to another injury news that's probably not, but Patrick Eaves has a lower body injury. He missed most of the preseason, but word is he could still play the season opener. But I've noticed that he hasn't been drafted in a lot of leagues. He wasn't drafted in my Cupful league, or I guess I drafted, or I got him in the auction like really late, I think. And then Brian, in our joint league that we drafted for yesterday, I had 2 drafts yesterday, by the way. That was another reason why we couldn't do a regular episode on Sunday night. But yeah, in our other league, Brian, he wasn't added at all. He's still a free agent. I feel like because people saw he's injured, Patrick Eaves, we all know he's always injured. Don't even grab him. But like, don't forget, last year he had 51 points overall and totally scorched at the end of the year once he got to Anaheim after the trade deadline. If he's injured and available in your league, like regardless of if he's injured or not, if he's injured, grab him, stash him in IR. If he's going to play, I'd say grab him. He's probably going to be on the top line with Getzlaf, maybe even Corey Perry on that line, or who knows. I would rather take a chance on Patrick Eaves, and then if it doesn't work out, whatever, you could drop him. But I think it's going to work out based on what happened last year. Obviously, who knows about his health and how long he'll last. Don't put big stock in him sticking on your roster all year long. But I would definitely grab him right now if he's available in free agency.
Yeah, especially at the price that he's likely available at, which is free. You might be married to some of your later round picks right now, thinking that they're the swings you took, and I get that, but Patrick Eaves should be at the top of your watch list if he is a free agent. Last I read, he was probable for opening night, and we've detailed his injury history in the past, which is definitely not good. He's had a real hard time staying healthy, even while playing depth roles where you wouldn't even notice if he goes missing. There's one of those edit points. Sorry to anyone. Anyway, if Eaves can stay healthy, I still see him playing the same increased minutes that he got last year and led him to a career season. I see him still getting play on the power play, and those together should help him get into 50-point territory. A lot of naysayers being like, Patrick Eaves, he never did it before. Why would he do it again? They're not looking at his ice time. He had like 6 more minutes on average last year than he ever has, and that's just off the top of my head. You can go check the numbers over at Hockey Reference just to verify. I grabbed him for a buck late in my Cupful auction draft. Feel really good about it. You can feel good about Patrick Eaves too if you have him on your team to start the year.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, who knows? Maybe this will blow up in our face. I did check. I also got him for a buck. Brian, we have a few things in common in our Cupful auction teams. I guess we're coming from the same place. You have Taylor Hall. I have Taylor Hall. Look at us. Also,
it's worth mentioning that I drafted first, so you're the copycat.
I guess so. That's true. We also drafted Taylor Hall in our joint league. It's not like I went into this weekend thinking I'm in love with Taylor Hall, but just happened. I don't even know. We had a really tough decision, by the way. We were deciding between Taylor Hall or Jake Gensel at that pick. I thought maybe because we're drafted with kind of like not the smart, no, I should say not the smartest, but like not the most hardcore hockey fan. So I thought maybe we could even wait on Gensel and get him the next round. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe we made a mistake or maybe not. We'll get to Gensel actually in a little bit. I'm rambling. Let's go to the next like injury news, I guess. So Robbie Fabry is out for the season. It's really sad. Like, you know, he had that really nice rookie year and a strong playoffs, and everyone was really excited to see what he could do last year, and then he got injured. Now he's like, I guess he came back to preseason, and like sad for him. I feel bad, like beyond fantasy. Obviously, it's really sad news for Robbie Fabry, who just wants to get his career going. But anyways, looking past that, on St. Louis, he's out for the season. Alex Steen is out for 3 weeks. He was probably going to hold a top 6 spot. I'm wondering, Brian, is there anyone that people should be targeting on St. Louis now that there are some openings? The most recent line combos I've seen for St. Louis, and again, take these with a grain of salt, but I've seen Schwartz, Stasny, Tarasenko as line 1, and then Sabatka, Shen, and Yaskin for line 2. So I mean, I guess that's, first of all, not great for Shen. People who drafted him thinking he was going to be a lock to center Vladimir Tarasenko. Didn't happen in the preseason. Maybe it could happen in the season. But yeah, I don't know about that. And also Sabatka and Yaskin playing with Shen, does that make them fantasy relevant? Because I wasn't expecting to be adding Sabatka or Yaskin to any of my lineups during the season.
What a bummer for Robbie Fabry to be injured before the season. This isn't the first time his exciting potential and like, let's see what this guy can do, has been derailed by injury. I don't know if he's a Band-Aid boy yet. Not really, but maybe injuries might not be totally related. And this situation seems like the St. Louis doctors might have messed it up a bit. I don't know if it could have been better, but it sure sounds in the aftermath like they didn't handle it the best way they could have. But let's get back to the healthy forwards. And there's not a lot to love in St. Louis in the top 6 or, well, top 12. Outside of Schwartz and Tarasenko, you have Stasny and Shen, who are both reliable in support roles. Maybe that's not giving them enough credit, but I'm not thinking of explosive upside coming from either of them, especially with Shen, like you said, Elon, not playing with Schwartz or Tarasenko. So the door is now open for Sabatka and Yaskin to come through on previously hoped for, but as of yet unrealized fantasy potential. Yaskin's the guy that we thought about before and put out there as someone, if only he got his turn in the top 6, he could really make an impression. That happened a couple times, not anything lengthy, but he didn't do much with it. And then Sabatka, he's the one who has seen the most recent success. He had 6 points, remember, in 11 playoff games after returning from 3 years of self-imposed NHL exile. And I remember at the time in our playoff, you were like, oh, wow, Sabatka, what should we be thinking of this guy? I still don't think a whole lot, especially, again, like if he's on the second line, there's just not a whole lot to work with if you're not playing with Schwartz and Tarasenko together. I can't believe I'm saying this. I know you said he's injured, Elon, for 3 weeks, but it's not the whole season. Maybe think about stashing Alex Steen.
What?
Like, I can't, it's betraying myself to say this.
I thought you hate him.
I do. I really hate him. But the Blues are going to need scoring help. I don't hate him as a person. I hate him as a guy on my fantasy team, just to be clear. I don't know him as a person. Maybe I'd hate him. Anyway, the Blues are going to need the scoring help. I feel like they might rather say, hey, Alex, can you do that thing where you shoot pucks towards the goalie? Again, the thing you stopped doing because you found your defensively responsible ways somewhere last year. Well, we don't need that right now. We need some shots on net. We need some goals. Give it a go. Sort of hoping that he gets tasked with some of this offense, in which case he could be like a somewhat useful fantasy ad. Elon, if you're asking me any of these guys or Jaromir Jagr, I feel like Steen, I don't know. It sounds like a disservice to Jagr. I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful. Like Steen just disappeared, right? He decided to change his game. It wasn't working and reset all the things that we've liked about him. Not that he was doing that well before that, but he had a really good start to the season. This is what I'm saying. Obviously, I'm struggling with it as I cannot end the sentence in a way that I'm comfortable with.
Honestly, Brian, like Alex Steen had a bit of a bad run last year at one point, but then he also went on a really good run, and you just kept on saying, "No, it's not going to continue. It's not going to continue." And then I guess you were right; like he slowed down again. But overall, he had 51 points in 76 games. Like it wasn't like he had
Yeah.
the most horrible season. And the year before that, he had 52 points in 67 games. He has trouble staying healthy, but he's been around a 55 to 60 point pace player still. I would definitely take Steen over Yager.
Yeah,
And
one of the disappointing things about him though was the shots dried up. So yeah, he did have some good runs, but he wasn't shooting. Like his value to me, or what I spent in last year's Cupful auction for him, was for his shots on goal that didn't come. But you're right, still capable of runs, and this is why I'm saying it. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic in spite of myself. Alex Steen, when he's healthy, could need to be an impact player. He's sure being paid like one by St. Louis, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for the team to ask him to act like one again.
all right. Well, and anyways, if you could stash him for free, then why not throw him in your IR, and then you could maybe keep him there. I love that. Brian hates that strategy, but I love that strategy. I mean, if you could do it, obviously there's a difference between whether it should be allowed and whether it's a smart thing to do. But if your league allows you to keep a player in IR and sort of give them a little tryout before you decide whether or not to drop someone to bring them onto your roster, why not take dibs?
I don't hate that strategy. It's a great strategy. I hate when it's taken advantage of, but again, if you can in your league be the guy who takes advantage of it, then might as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm the one who suggested it. I said stash Steen.
Good. Okay. At some point in this episode, I'm going to get you to admit that you hate something or someone. That's my goal. Okay. Next piece of news. This was a surprising tidbit out of preseason. Jesse Puljujarvi, who people got really excited about as he was skating with McDavid. I think we even talked about him last week with Dom. He got sent to the minors. Oh, well, maybe he won't be there for long. And I guess the interesting thing is that Kyler Yamamoto made the team, the guy who just got drafted, that I remember when I did my episode with either Cam or Peter Harling, like after the draft, I think it was Cam Robinson, but he was saying, don't expect anyone outside of Hischier and Patrick, like maybe like some other person that we won't expect in the first round to make the team. But like he said, he didn't expect Yamamoto to make the team. And look at that. He makes it. He was spending some time in the preseason on the Connor McDavid line. I think at the end, like the most recent line combos we've been seeing is Yamamoto on the second line with Lucic and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and then Draisaitl and McDavid. So, lumping the two big stars together along with Pat Maroon as the top line. So first of all, that's kind of exciting for Pat Maroon, of course. If he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, that's good. And if you're in a hits league, you probably definitely want to have Pat Maroon as a late pick if you can get him. But also Yamamoto in the top 6 is pretty interesting. And then the final thing is Ryan Strome, who I think a lot of people were excited about. He actually went for a decent amount in my couple auction draft yesterday. I wonder if the person who bought him is kind of regretting that, because he was on a line most recently with Kajula and Jussi Jokinen in the bottom 6. So I don't know about that. I want to know, Brian, what do you think about Yamamoto? Is he going to stick with the team? Is he someone that people should be rushing to grab?
I'm actually going to start with Puljujarvi. If you have a non-active spot in your league for players in the minors that you can stash without using a normal roster spot, or if your rosters are deep enough to handle like a prospect system or just a little bit of dead weight on your roster, I think you might as well take the gamble that Puljujarvi is going to be back in the NHL at some point this year. And then you can see what he can do for your roster once he gets there. Have to think it'll happen eventually. He scored near a 60-point pace in half a season with Bakersfield of the AHL last year. And so when there is opportunity in Edmonton, and there should be, I expect him to be back in the mix. But yeah, going back to Yamamoto, I am excited for him. I do admittedly have a soft spot for undersized, speedy wingers, and as a high-paced 5'8", that's what he's listed as, 154-pound skater. That would be really small. He certainly fits the bill. There's, of course, still a fair chance that Yamamoto does not stick in the NHL, but if he does, it'll be because what he's doing is working. That sounds like a ridiculous statement to make. I guess I'm just saying it's possible, and if he is in the NHL all season long, it's probably because he's scoring, because something's working, and if that's the case, his name could sneak in to the Calder conversation, IMHO.
Yeah, I feel like Yamamoto is one of these guys where if you want to take a flyer on him, for sure go for it, but don't like drop someone that you drafted that you expected to be a solid person on your team for the whole year for a lottery ticket in Yamamoto. This is like for a streaming spot. We're going to name a whole bunch of these rookies. We're going to get to a section really soon of the podcast where I'm just going to tell you a whole bunch of rookies who are looking like they're going to be on their team's top line, and you could maybe pick one of them, maybe Yamamoto, even though he's second line, and see what's going to happen, but don't, hold on if things aren't going well. And as far as Ryan Strome goes, I'm going to say that he is the poor man's Jordan Eberle from last year. And most people weren't even happy with what they got from Jordan Eberle last year, but at least he had some shots on goal. So that's why I'm not into Ryan Strome at all.
Yeah, and I don't even think Strome is as good as Eberle. Sorry to the Oilers fans still listening. So in that case, if he is getting Eberle's deployment, you can expect less than what Eberle had a lot of we've talked about this. Eberle had a lot going against him last year. Bounces, deployment choices. Strome is going to need to work hard. I've definitely voiced my skepticism around Strome being more than a 50-point player. I'm waiting for him to prove me wrong. However, I would not be that keen on having him in my lineup going into opening night, especially with the latest line situations. If you want to hold out a game or two to see if anything shifts quickly, because it totally can in the first couple games, sure. But otherwise, I feel like there's some equally interesting options available in free agency.
Yeah, and also if Strome does get on a line with Connor McDavid, or if anyone on Edmonton gets on that line, again, don't drop someone super reliable for that player because it could change like in a couple of games. Okay, Brian, before we move on to a bunch of rookies on top lines, why don't we take a minute to give some thanks to one of the sponsors of this week's episode, our good friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, the best place to go and buy tickets. And buying tickets to sports and concerts can be so complicated, but thankfully, there's a simpler and better way to buy with SeatGeek. They're the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. And with their seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for great value. The season is just about to start. We're all getting excited to watch some hockey games. Why not go over to SeatGeek, see where you can find some good value deals for your home team. Put in an offer code, which we have, by the way. Listeners of Keeping Karlsson can put in an offer code, KEEPING, KEEPING. You know how to spell keeping. You get $20 right away, rebate off of your first purchase at SeatGeek. So why not go and see, Jaromir Jagr play for the Calgary Flames? If you're in Calgary, how could you not want to go see that? So check out SeatGeek, and I think you will be happy you did.
I know you'll be happy you did, assuming your team wins. If they don't, you'll at least be happy that you saved $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase with the promo code KEEPING.
Okay, so Brian, I wanted to talk about some more rookies that are interesting. So let's start with someone who in the chat room, there's already been some hype here. By the way, we're live thanks to people who joined us in the chat room, even on short notice. Anders Bjork has been playing in preseason and in practices on line 1 on the Bruins with Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand. You can't get better line mates than that. I guess you can. I guess Nemesnikov playing with Stamkos and Kucherov is pretty good. Okay, you can have similar line mates, but you can't get much better than Bergeron and Marchand. Also, I've been seeing that Anders Bjork was even playing on the top power play, bumping, I guess, Ryan Spooner from last year. So obviously a lot of potential for production here. Again, I'm not going to say it for every player. I'm going to say it one more time. This could change. Don't go crazy. But for now, I don't even think he had like the most amazing preseason in terms of like actual production. But whatever, like it's a great situation. Anyone who plays there for the whole season is going to have probably a fantasy relevant season. So I think you definitely want to take a good hard look at Anders Bjork.
Yeah, take a good hard look at him. I have to say, Elon, of this list of rookies that we've got, he's probably the one I have the least faith in, or at least has the least pedigree, the least expectation, the least background that suggests that he's going to be able to step right in and produce. I've already seen some cooling down on him as we get to the end of the preseason. However, yeah, you're playing with Bergeron, you're playing with Marchand. By the way, Patrice Bergeron, while we're talking about the Bruins, often he's like Taylor Hall, always undervalued in fantasy drafts. Like every time I use a tool like Dom's spreadsheet or Fantasy Hockey Geek to figure out a player's value over replacement, Bergeron is always right up there with guys who are going like 5-6 rounds ahead of him. I had guys in my Cupful auction draft go like 50 picks sooner for about $10-15 more who I had tiered similarly who I had tiered similarly as Patrice Bergeron. So everyone's probably drafted by now, but if not, consider him also in like daily fantasy contests. Perhaps he might be good value if the people making the salaries are also undervaluing him.
Yeah, the thing with Bergeron is his numbers last year are very misleading. He like had his highest shot totals ever, and he had like a 65-point pace like after December, I think, or after January. Like he was really awesome. He just didn't do anything for the first couple of months, so his overall numbers really looked down. But he was really good last year. I expect him to be really good again. So many shots on goals. If your league counts that's obviously really valuable.
Yeah. So and just to take it back to Anders Bjork, great opportunities, just about the most I have to say about him. Excited to see what happens. There are worse options, especially in deeper leagues. You might as well give him a try. But Elon, you can go on with the list and you'll see I am a little more excited about just about everyone else on it.
Okay, well then I'm pretty sure you're going to be more excited about this next guy because everyone is. Clayton Keller. We've been talking about him all summer series. I feel like whenever we've done a prospects episode, he's been the guy that most people have brought up as the maybe leading candidate to win the Calder Trophy. And I mean, he's got the deployment for sure. All preseason long, he's playing on line 1, power play 1 with Max Domi, Derek Stepan. He had 8 points in 4 preseason games. Definitely living up to the potential that we were excited about so far. Preseason doesn't count, but he's definitely in a good situation. I don't think he's getting bumped. You know, someone like Anders Bjork, you know, a couple of bad games, I could see him, you know, going to the bottom 6, but I think it's going to take a lot more for Clayton Keller to get bumped to the bottom 6. So I'm pretty excited about him. He should definitely be owned in all leagues. If he's not owned in your league, I think check him out. But Brian, what's his ceiling for this year?
You know, Clayton Keller, I'm sorry to say, I'm just kidding. He's one of the most hyped rookies in Keeping Karlsson circles, thanks in large part to Dobber Prospects and past guest host, Dobber Prospects editor and past guest host, Cam Robinson, Crazy Joe Davola on Twitter, who has been singing his praises very loudly for at least, it feels like 8 months, probably more. Keller seems like one of the most individually capable players in the rookie class. And when I say that, I mean he's someone who's not merely getting put in a good situation where, hey, maybe he'll succeed. He seems like someone who can actually help create that good situation in which he and others can succeed. I'm really, really hopeful. There's a big hole in Arizona for some offense to come up. And yeah, Max Domi is going to be back and healthy. Derek Stepan's there now. It's not looking, even without Keller, it's not looking as dire as it did last year, but Keller helps make it deep enough for actual meaningful production to happen. Arizona's going to be so weird to watch this year. Like between Ranta and their offense, there's just a lot of expectations that could be really great. But if you're really trying to temper yourself and be rational, it's like, maybe it'll be okay.
I mean, they can't do much worse than they did last year. So I feel like if you take last year as the floor, which I think is a reasonable thing, they'll be at least a little better. Brian, okay, Jade's asking here, what do you think is the floor ceiling for Keller? Like, who knows? I'd say, okay, I'll give a shot. I'd say the floor maybe around like 40 points. Like, I feel like he should be able to get a half point per game if he's playing on the top line, top power play all year. And then ceiling, I mean, who knows? Ceiling is tough. Like, I don't know, 55, I think would be pretty amazing for a rookie. Like Clayton Keller. I guess some people would even be like, Cam would be like, what are you talking, 70, 80? Like, I don't know. And I don't think actually Cam would say that, but you know what I mean? Like, I would say expect around like 50, 55 with a floor of 40. Does that sound right, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. I would have definitely gone floor at 40. If I wanted to be like super fantasy upside man, I'd say, well, look at the Leafs rookies last year. It's not the same situation. Austin Matthews is not in this equation, so you can knock off a few points here, and Arizona still might not be quite as deep as the Leafs were last year, but I'm wondering if he can get around what like Marner and Nylander did last year, close to 60 points. Like ceiling could be 70, 80, 90 points, whatever. It's not that meaningful. If I'm picking a range for him to end up in, I would say 40 to 60, and anything above 50 points would be a successful season for him.
Yeah, okay, by the way, since we answered Jade's question, thanks for the question, Jade, and also big shout out to you, Jade, and also Colin, 2 people who in the middle of the couple tier 1 auction draft on Saturday, you'll be able to hear it if you go and check out that episode, jumped in, they were just watching the show, and I was like, can someone here like come join this auction and finish the draft for this team? And then she and Colin just like jumped in and did it and drafted pretty good teams. It was pretty impressive. So yeah, big props to you. Okay, let's keep going, Brian. Another name that we have been hearing a lot about, Alex DeBrincat. So the Blackhawks lines have been kind of all over the place. So for a while, it was looking like it was going to be DeBrincat, Schmaltz, and Patrick Kane on I guess the second line or the first line. I don't know. There's the Taves, Saad, and I guess Richard Panik line that also seemed kind of locked in. But as the Hawks are prone to do, they were shaking things up. I don't even know at this point if DeBrincat is even going to be playing with Patrick Kane to start the season. I've been seeing like Patrick Sharp and like with Patrick Kane and Anisimov. I've also been seeing like Hartman with Schmaltz and Kane. So just I've seen like I was just searching on Twitter for Blackhawks lines and a whole bunch of different combinations came up. But regardless, it looks like Alex DeBrincat has at least made the team, which is something not everyone expected. We'll see if he could last. Maybe it'll be a Yamamoto situation where he could get sent down. But in the meantime, he's made the team and he has the potential to play with Patrick Kane. Well, maybe, and also Patrick Sharp. So what do you think about Alex DeBrincat? Is he someone that people should be jumping on, maybe in comparison with Anders Bjork?
Well, the difference between him and Anders Bjork is Anders Bjork is starting the season in a really good position, and anyone going for DeBrincat is going to have to hope that he finds his way into a better position. DeBrincat right now, well, he started as a long shot in July, and now he's on the opening night roster. He outplayed Vinny Hinostroza to get there, who played significant time with the Hawks last year. I don't love the thought of DeBrincat playing on line 3 to start the year with Sharp and Anisimov. Like, who's the one driving offense there? But think he could still have the skill and the shot to make a splash if and when the lines get shuffled. And it seems from the recent coach quotes from Quenneville that I've seen that DeBrincat is considered as a versatile guy who can move around the lineup as needed. On the whole, I'm more excited about DeBrincat than I expected to be at this point. I'm honestly still a little bruised from past preseason projection experiences with Chicago middle nine prospects. Think of names like Teravainen, Nick Schmaltz, Tyler Motte. That's how unimpressive he was. I can't even remember how to pronounce his name at the moment. Those are just a few examples of guys that we watched closely, thinking that they were well positioned for a breakout and weren't able to come through. In Chicago, of course, maybe the slight difference this year is that they do need those young players to step up and break out more than ever with the thinness of the rest of their lineup. And perhaps they open up a spot for DeBrincat if things aren't working, if they're scoring the same way they were in their first round playoff series last year. And of course, that would be a positive thing for him to move elsewhere. Not sure how much damage he can do playing with Sharp and Anisimov, neither of whom had great years last year in terms of being able to move the puck up and create offense.
Yeah, well, someone here in the chat room, Mike, said DeBrincat, and then got a lot of wrath from people in the chat room. So most people are into DeBrincat, not Mike. Maybe should I use my moderator abilities here and kick Mike out of the chat for this blasphemy?
No. If anything, okay. you should kick out Shadow, who has the nerve to tell me how Tyler Motte is pronounced. But I actually really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so one more rookie, and then we'll get to some other players who aren't rookies, but still looking like they might be in new situations on good lines. But got to bring up Jacob Vrana over on Washington. Looks like he's going to be starting the year playing with a couple people you might have heard of, Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov. Those are pretty good line mates. Those compare pretty well with Bergeron and Marchand. I don't know. It would be kind of fun to debate, like, who are the better pair to be with. So Vrana, again, like a guy who knows if he'll stay there. I didn't know too much about him going into the year. I know that we were speculating that someone was going to benefit from all of these departures from the Washington top 6. And I think both Burakovsky and Vrana have. I think at some point in the offseason, we're saying like maybe Connolly could be someone to look at. Obviously that didn't work out. So we could just focus on Vrana here. What do you think compared to these other guys? Like, do you see some upside, or do you think he's like going to be someone that's going to stick on that line?
So like Anders Bjork, you mentioned it yourself, Vrana is in a great situation, but a little more exciting than Bjork's situation based on two things. First, Vrana gets to play with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, hopefully. That's new. That's a new combo with two very exciting players, and hence that's one exciting thing about Vrana's season about to begin. And the second exciting thing is that we did get to see Vrana for a bit last year. And if you look at his stat line, underwhelming. 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points and 32 shots on goal in 21 games. So like a shot and a half per game, a point every 3.5 games. But there were glimpses of potential. He had 4 or more shots on goal on 5 separate occasions. That's good for Vrana. That's something else that's exciting, which is why I think he's worth a squirt.
No, you said it.
I said it.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to some non-rookies now. This one really jumped out at me. This is a huge opportunity. He may have been drafted in your leagues, but if it's a shallower league, he may have slipped through. Matthew Perreault. It was looking like he was going to be in the top 6, but maybe on a line with like Little and Ehlers, which is good, but nothing to like go crazy about. But now I'm seeing that the most recent line combos in Winnipeg have Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perreault. So there's another good combo to play with. Plus, Matthew Perreault is someone who's done it before. He's not just some rookie, not to throw any shade at Verana and Bjork and DeBrincat, but like Matthew Perreault has been a good fantasy relevant producer for a few years now, when he stays healthy, at least. And now if he can play with Scheifele and Wheeler, I'm really excited to see what he could do with that opportunity. Definitely someone that I think people should be looking at and probably adding over everyone else we've talked about if they're available, if he's available in your league. Maybe comparable with Clayton Keller.
We'll see how long this lasts. It's not something that any of us anticipated going into the season, but we have seen Mathieu Perreault be someone who is a great utility player and has a lot of sneaky fantasy value, not just when he does go on point scoring runs, as we famously predicted. I don't know, it's too long ago now. What was it, Elon? 2 or 3 years ago?
It was our second season of doing.
Yeah.
Everyone who's listening doesn't know. We're like at the point now. We're in our 5th season. Hooray for us! We're at the point now where we're going to make references to previous shows and no one knows what we're talking about.
But it was it was a shining, glorious moment, and we nailed it. And a lot of people think Mathieu Perreault, if he's not doing that, he's not worth a lot, which isn't true. He still gets regular shots on goal. He still gets a decent stream of points for like a depth roster guy. And in a top line position, he's certainly someone who seems capable of keeping up with 2 excellent players and getting in on points scored on that line. So for sure, I'm not going to say it again. I really wanted to, but I didn't. For sure, worth a try on your roster. I'm going to say that pretty much about the next 7 guys you bring up. That is the conclusion. That's why we're talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, this episode, again, this is not an exact regular episode. Like, I'm just telling you guys some options, some players that you should look at. We don't have much to analyze here. We refuse to analyze preseason stats. So we're just going to tell you what looks interesting. Come back next week and we'll start actually analyzing what's going on in games that matter. By the way, Mike in the chat room asked, so panic time for Ehlers owners. I mean, if Ehlers is playing with Little and Laine, I feel like that's pretty good. Patrick Laine, I don't think anyone's too concerned about him being able to produce, and I'm sure Ehlers and Little will both do just fine as well.
Brian Little, also often slept on and underappreciated in fantasy drafts. I've seen many a year happen where he goes undrafted, gets picked up a couple weeks in, and there's no looking back for whoever owns him. He's a great guy to have if you have room on your roster. Definitely consider him. Elon, I don't know. Who would you take between Perreault and Little?
I would take Little.
Yeah, I think me too. Just because Perreault seems like someone who could easily be moved anywhere in the top 9 just to help the team be a little more stable. One player, one Jets player whose name is not a part of this conversation, disappointingly for many probably, is Kyle Connor. He was listed as a potential dark horse Calder candidate going into the season, but the latest preseason line combos, which again don't mean the world to anyone, but they're what we have to go on. They don't have him in a key offensive role, even though if Perreault's on the first line, you have to think that there was a role potentially available.
Yeah, so who knows? Things could get shaken up. Maybe Kyle Connor is someone that now you don't need to add, but keep on your watch list. If you see something change, maybe you want to jump on him then. By the way, another reason why I would take Little over Perreault is I think Little's more likely to get power play time, and that usually leads to more points, and of course, power play points. Jade is asking in the chat, can you guys talk about some younger, not quite rookies too? Fiala, Meyer, Konechny. Jade, like, I know I just gave you some props, but also it's like, we have a show prepared. What are you doing? But if you want to ask us that question, we have a patron cast coming this Thursday, and you can ask us any question you want, and we're bound by the rules of Patron Cast to answer any question you give us. I'm sure you'll be there, or you could post the question in the Facebook group, or send it to us by email, and then we'll answer it then. And so why don't we take this opportunity, Brian, to just say that if anyone else wants to join us for our Patron Cast, they can become a patron of Keeping Karlsson. Any patron gets to join our Patreon. Our weekly mailbag shows a ton of extra content. KeepingKarlsson.com/patron. Check it out for all of the details. We just had a mailbag show last week with Peter Harling from Dumber Prospects, and we talked all about prospects. It was such a great show. You could get that show. Just
Shameless. I'm cutting in. Shameless. The point has been made. KeepingKarlsson.com. No, anyway.
/patron.
after that chastising, we might Jade, we're getting Fiala's gonna come up as collateral towards the end of the show. And Meyer, how disappointing that last time I looked, I admit I haven't looked for a few days, was not looking to be slated into a top 6 spot in San Jose to start the year. It seemed like it was his spot to lose. Either we were wrong or he really did just lose it. But I do think he's like Vrana. We saw some big shot taking potential from him last year. Plus I believe he threw some hits in the mix as well. So still a guy to keep an eye on depending on his spot in the depth chart. Unfortunately, if you're not on the top line with the Joes in San Jose, second line's okay to be, but there really isn't a lot of other places to have meaningful production. You just look at a guy like Thomas Hertl, who is a fairly talented player and still is just middling in terms of his fantasy relevance.
Honestly, also it's like old news that being on a line with the Joes is like something good. Like last year, there were like a bunch of people who took turns playing with the Joes, and none of them really did anything. Currently, I think LeBlanc has been the one sitting there. I'm sure it won't last. I'm sure he won't do anything. I'm not too excited about the Joes. I mean, Joe Thornton went for $1 in both of our auction drafts. It's not as if Joe Thornton is someone that people are expecting to break out for 82 points again. So anyway, Pavelski's good. Let's go now to some more players. I wanted to go now to a guy. Okay, this is my favorite sleeper of the list, and someone who I know you hate, but I bullied you into letting us take him as our last pick in our joint league draft yesterday. I'm talking about Brendan Gallagher, who, out of nowhere, I guess it's been a little while. I know you were excited at some point that Ales Hemsky was the guy playing with Druin and Pacioretty, and you even said it in the Facebook group, and I was like, Brian, what are you talking? That's not going to last. I was right. I mean, who knows? The season hasn't actually started yet. Maybe I'll turn out to be wrong, but lately it's been Brendan Gallagher playing with Pacioretty and Druin on the first line. Gallagher's already someone we used to really like as a big shot taker and like an impact player, and then obviously he kind of fell out of favor. It was really frustrating seeing him fall all over the lineup, but if he's on the top line, also I've been seeing him on the top power play. Brendan Gallagher, mwah, what a steal as the last pick in the draft, someone who could give you a ton of shots, potentially a ton of points, great situation, hopefully it'll last. And then the corollary for that, I love watching Brian roll his eyes at me as I talk, just like when I was promoting the Patreon program at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But yeah, on the other side with Gallagher being in that great situation, Alex Galchenyuk, I think he's my favorite snoozer of the year so far before the season has started. Like I said, he was playing like the third line at some point during preseason. It seems like the Habs have no interest in giving Galchenyuk a meaningful chance to produce, at least fantasy-wise.
Potentially this, potentially that. That's how you talk about Gallagher. Yeah, lots of guys in the league potentially, but he's been buried for a while in Montreal. He had poor deployment last year.
Who?
Sure, maybe
you're talking about Gallagher or Galchenyuk?
Yeah, Gallagher.
You can say
and
both.
Galchenyuk. He's getting. I could be talking about either one, and they both have the same potentially disclaimer on their name. You can try and grab them. I don't think you need to reach for Gallagher at the moment. If he does stick in a big role, anyone who's been paying attention for the last couple of years should be cynical enough to not want to jump on him right away and to have him remain available with enough time for you to want to run and get him if there is some ray of sunshine in his numbers. Galchenyuk is just, Montreal just seems like the place where players go to get disrespected. I remember Alex Semin. No,
Right,
no response.
Don't even with that. Like, only you thought he'd be good.
And now they're gonna end Ales Hemsky's career the same way.
Yeah. Alex Hemsky has this like shining career going at this point, and the Habs are gonna snuff it out. I'm sure they're not gonna disrespect Druin, by the way. It seems like he's a lock for a top line, top power play. By the way, Brian, I feel like you have a bit of a short memory, just like with Alex Steen. It was just 2 seasons ago that Gallagher had 40 points in 53 games. Let's do the math there. 40 divided by 53 times 82, that's a 62-point pace. That's a very valuable play. That's just 2 years ago. That's not like Ales Hemsky, how he was like really good back in 2010. This is a couple years ago. Last year, Gallagher got bad deployment. Obviously, it disappointed me as one of his owners. Then he had a hand injury. I think it was like something weird, like he got injured one hand and then the other hand. So I don't think he's actually injury prone. He's like slashed in the hand. Now he's back. He's healthy. He's playing on the top line. He used to be really good. I'll bet you I can find clips of old Keeping Karlsson episodes with you saying Gallagher is someone to watch. I think you're wrong. I think if you're telling people that they don't have to add him, someone else is going to add him, and then they're going to regret it. That's my call.
part of what you're hearing from me is me having held a candle for Gallagher for a little while and saying, well, he'll still get you shots, which he will, and he'll still get you hits, which he will. It's almost like a Landeskog situation at the moment. Except I might have a little more faith in Gallagher. I'm not sure. And you're mentioning Gallagher's recent, yeah, he has been good recently. You also need to consider that Ales Hemsky, it's only 4 years ago that he had 17 points in 20 games after being traded to Ottawa, a 70-point pace.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the next player I wanted to talk about. How about Sean Couturier centering Giroux and Voracek over in Philly? That's interesting for two reasons. First of all, Sean Couturier, someone who's always sort of been like middle six center, not getting the best line mate, someone that seems talented, but, you know, I guess getting deployed more in a defensive capacity. All of a sudden, that's like the top place to be, playing with Giroux and Voracek, so that's good for him. Maybe take a look at him. And then also Claude Giroux being on the left wing, that means he could get left wing eligibility, which really raises his fantasy value. If all of a sudden you could get a multi-category eligible, multi-position eligible Claude Giroux. So two interesting guys there that I think we should at least touch on.
Giroux is someone else. I feel like I'm saying this a lot. Getting disrespected in fantasy drafts. People are nervous. He was a top 2-round pick last season and has been for the last, 6-7 years maybe. And then one off season that was, it's a pattern of decline, yes, but the reasons for that decline, still unclear. I don't think it's all age or injury. You know so much that I always say about my thoughts on the Flyers. So I'm hoping the Flyers have fixed things up for Giroux. Him getting winger eligibility certainly adds to his value in fantasy leagues. And Couturier, I suppose you can hope that he becomes the new Shen and plays that complementary role really well, getting power play time and being on the top line here and there. Remember, the Flyers have never really kept someone consistently in that top line spot for a little while now. And so I wouldn't get too excited about Couturier on that basis. Remember when he came into the league, there was a lot of thinking that he would have that offensive flair and hype. And then, yeah, he proved himself as a more defensively capable person. And I'm still wondering if that's what his job is going to be, even if he is playing with some great players. It's not a given that means putting up points. I can name you, Michael Raffl off the top of my head, had significant time on the top line over a couple years and was not able to ever do anything about it. And that's why I'm still not getting too excited about Couturier, but maybe this is enough to push him up to a more reasonable bet for 50 points.
Yeah, I feel like with Couturier, and hey, I'll admit he's a free agent in my cupful tier 2 Ottawa league, and I had the option to pick him up today and I didn't. So here's a free gift to my competitors. You could take him. So I'm not saying he's a sure thing to get a lot of points, and they could also shift things around. I mean, Giroux hasn't played left wing from what I recall in a long time, so maybe that's something that they won't stick with. But put him on your watch list and let's see what happens. Okay, let's talk about Jason Pominville. Brian, I know as soon as he got traded to Buffalo from Minnesota, you were excited about Jason Pominville returning to his home where he used to be so fantasy relevant. And he actually had a good run even last year. So Pominville isn't dead. And now he's looking especially nice because he was playing for a lot of the preseason with Evander Kane and Jack Eichel. So that's good for Evander Kane too, by the way. But also, I mean, Pominville is someone who's probably not drafted in your league, someone in free agency. He is still someone who's clearly capable of putting up some points. He did it last year. He's kind of older, but playing with Jack Eichel, that might be the youth, serum that could help him stay a little younger. I don't know. I think Jason Pominville, another guy to maybe put on your watch list.
If you don't mind me recycling a bit about Pominville from, I think it was episode 156 that I'm trying to pull up right now as I speak. Oh, no, it wasn't. So that means I'm without something to say. But I did go on about why I think he was underappreciated last year, not by fantasy poolies. Like he got the treatment he deserved. But I think he could have done better than what he put up in terms of his percentages. Still trying to hunt down the actual spiel that, he saw only 11 minutes when he was playing in Minnesota. And he kept his rate stats half decent while he did that. So more substantial time in the top 6 is going to help if he gets that. I like him to hit 50 points this year, upside for 55.
Yeah, that's really good. If your league is deep, that could be good for him. All of this little fumbling around, that's what you can get by normally joining us for the live show. You're getting a little taste of it here with an unedited show. Brian, maybe I don't even need tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know if I could just stop editing every week. Maybe I could save myself a lot of time.
No, I already think you can't, because I wish I had a moment to really pull it up. Because I said his numbers were half decent last year in limited ice time. They were actually top 6 forward numbers. Still, his rate stats. He had great points per 60 numbers. Other percentages looked pretty reasonable. Just needed more time, and it was a bounce back from the season before. So yes, I'm all aboard Jason Pominville in the top 6. Although, like, I'm still concerned because Buffalo Sabres seem to somehow disappoint every year. Kyle Okposo is a good example of that. When he moved there, I felt reasonably confident that he could still produce at least 60 points away from Tavares. And that's just not what we've gotten. And we've gotten injuries along the way too, and not just like the hospital incident that happened at the end of last season. That's totally separate. And I certainly don't begrudge him for any of it. What am I saying, Elon? Buffalo Sabres, look out for them. I'm a little nervous about them, but Jason Pominville certainly seems like a good depth option.
Yeah. So put him on your watch list. Check him out. Let's see how he does. And Buffalo overall could be better. Like, they got Scandella also in that deal from Minnesota. Leonard could be good. Like, Leonard is someone who's probably you're going to be able to get pretty late in your draft as far as starting goalies go. So people to watch. I think Leonard and like Antti Ranta I'd have in a similar. Like, I'm excited to see what both of them could do next year. Okay, Nemesnikov. I already mentioned this. Nemesnikov has been playing with Stamkos and Kucherov. At some point, Braden Point was there. Now it's Nemesnikov. So who knows? Like, start Nemesnikov. Let's see what happens in the first game. That's a really good situation to be in, whoever's playing on that top line. The other lines on Tampa Bay were looking kind of weird the last I saw. Like, Killorn with Tyler Johnson and Callahan, and then Yanni Gourde with Braden Point and Palat. So splitting up Palat and Johnson. This seems like it just hurts everyone's fantasy value, basically, in Tampa, except for Nemesnikov if it stays like this.
Yeah, anyone who grabbed Braden Point, I still think he can do well. It's really weird. I think it's a waste to have Tyler Johnson playing with Callahan and Killorn. It seems like a waste of Tyler Johnson. Although Killorn's pretty good. Maybe that's a good pairing. I feel like Callahan is just like the poison pill for any NHL line that has a hope of scoring. You're right. It would be bad news for everyone except Nemesnikov if those lines held. And anyone who did take Braden Point with a late round pick, you might want to look at some of the other options we've mentioned this episode if his deployment situation doesn't improve quickly.
Yeah, I'd swap Point for Jason Pominville, I think, in a one-year league. Okay. Next, Brian, I saw you read an article today. You sent me some reading to do about Zach Hyman playing with Matthews and Nylander. It was an article from The Athletic, and you were saying how maybe Hyman could be underrated and can surprise people. That's another number 3 on a pair of like really good players, Matthews, especially Austin Matthews, and Nylander, no slouch himself. Do you think Zach Hyman is someone that people should look to add or at least watch?
Definitely watch. He was on my watch list for a lot of time last season because, well, he is. I said Michael Furland was the most anonymous first line player in the NHL. I challenge, by the way, anyone listening to tweet at us with a more anonymous first liner. Zach Hyman might be the second most, as someone who is just totally overshadowed and forgotten about playing with Matthews and Nylander. Just being on the ice with them should help. Look, percentages weren't in his favor last year. And the article I read by James Myrtle over at The Athletic went into detail about how often someone who shot as low as he did, the number offhand, somewhere around 4.5%, 5%, how often that repeats. And the answer was not that often. Guys like Tyler Kennedy's the classic example, and some other enforcer types who are out of the league now. It's rare that it stays that low, someone's shooting percentage, especially for someone as illustrated by Myrtle in the article, who gets so many opportunities from up close in front of the net. That's where he's getting his shots. That's where he's spending his time in the offensive zone. He's also considered a pretty good forechecker. I don't have the data to know if that's true or not. I've watched a couple times. He seems tenacious at times, but I don't know. I don't feel like I have enough evidence to really back up that claim one way or the other. But he's on the top line. If you're into Michael Furland for some reason, I guess a lot of people are, so that's not the greatest endorsement. But Zach Hyman could be someone who is just destined to score more than he did last year, just by virtue of percentages favoring him a little more alone, and being a guy who can continue generating chances from in front with, again, two very talented line mates. Cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah, so I guess this episode is all about telling you people to add to your watch list, and let's throw one more onto the pile. How about Scott Hartnell? I saw some rumors. I'll bet you a lot of people listening don't even know what team Scott Hartnell's on this year. I'll tell you, it's the Nashville Predators, and apparently he has been seen playing with Forsberg and Johansson on the top line over there, which would be horrible for Arvidsson, I would think, because that seemed like Arvidsson's locked in spot, and he was so good. So I'm actually not too concerned about this. I just have a feeling, like a gut feeling, that Scott Hartnell, he of 38 points last year, which I guess isn't so bad over in Columbus. But, he was such a disappointment last year. I know he was also a disappointment in terms of like hits and PIMs. Like he was down in all the categories that people used to think he was so valuable for, that he could get points and those peripherals. Last year, he did nothing. Obviously, if he's on the top line with Forsberg and Johansson, that would be good. Do you think there's a chance that lasts? And also, I heard Kevin Fiala was a guy who could potentially take that top line spot. So what's going on in Nashville? Are they just going to keep auditioning a few people before they decide to just let's just give it back to Arvidsson because he's the best?
It was this time last year where we were saying who's going to fill in on the top line with Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg, and we settled on Victor Arvidsson. It was great. It was wonderful. It happened. It wasn't necessarily set in stone from the start, but it's who we sort of hoped for and anticipated. This year, I'm not going to try and make that attempt to guess. I feel like it's crazy to think that Scott Hartnell could survive in a first line top power play role all season long. He was not really well deployed by John Tortorella as his tenure in Columbus ended, and there is the feeling that he still has something more to give than what he was offered last year. But the fact remains, he's an older guy. It's been a while since he's had meaningful production, and Kevin Fiala is certainly pushing for that position too. Some of it also depends on how long do you really think Nashville is going to keep Arvidsson, Johansson, and Forsberg apart? Are they really going to commit to spreading out that offense by only having two of those guys play together? Still unsure. Lots up in the air, which is why it's going to be so great to have 2 weeks of 1 week, but I usually make my decisions after 2 weeks of hockey to be played. It's coming. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, and I'm very excited, of course, to do our next episode, which, by the way, programming note, won't be on Sunday. It's a long weekend next weekend, so we'll be doing our next show on Monday night at 8 p.m., where we'll break down everything that's happened in the first, I guess, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, we're going to have 5 days of actual hockey stats to talk about. I'm very excited. Okay, one more player before we end the show. This guy's not available for you unless you haven't drafted yet, in which case he is. Brian, how high should people be on Jake Gensel? He destroyed the preseason. I'm going to reference preseason numbers again because they're so noteworthy. 9 points in 4 games. He was playing with Crosby and Sheary, just like we hoped he would. He was playing on the top power play because Hornqvist was injured. Hornqvist might be coming back soon, so we'll have to see what happens there. Maybe Gensel earned that spot. I know we generally don't like to get so super excited about guys like this. I would think, oh, Taylor Hall or Jake Gensel. I feel like such a Brian answer would be, Taylor Hall's a pretty sure 65-point guy. Lots of shots. Gensel could get 65 points, but why not go for the more sure thing? But just something inside of me says, maybe Jake Gensel, everything just looks so perfect. So maybe you just need to, throw some cold water on me or something and calm me down. I feel like I'm too excited about this guy.
I'm not going to. Things looked pretty perfect last year also. I don't want to be the guy. Everybody loves Jake Gensel. Don't make me be the guy who's going to say don't draft Jake Gensel.
All right, then good.
That's my Jake Gensel. And I know you're waiting for more. Honestly, the sky seems to be the limit. If he plays with Crosby, why not expect more than 70 points? That there is an if in that sentence. That's a very important if. But if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll still land among the stars, unless you miss out on Taylor Hall.
So, yeah, someone in the chat earlier asked if DeBrincat could be the new Panarin. And, I guess that would make sense playing with Patrick Kane. But I think Gensel could be the new Panarin. Come in, high pedigree. Gensel actually played a bit last season. Panarin, had just come from the KHL. But, coming in to a great line. And everyone thought, well, there's no way Panarin's going to get 70-plus points. And he did. So maybe Gensel can too. We'll see. All right. That's going to do it for our last episode of the preseason of the summer series. It's all over, Brian. 1 week from today.
Thank goodness. And we're going to celebrate. Elon, I'm just going to remind people because it ran in the pre-roll, but we have a new sponsor called FanDuel. You may have heard of them. And we're going to have a daily fantasy competition every week, once a week. all you have to do is go to fanduel.com/KARL, or if you prefer, keepingkarlsson.com/FanDuel. They'll take you to the same place. Sign up, compete against Elon and I. The contest opens on Wednesday. That's when you can start setting your lineups, and then it actually runs on Thursday. And Elon, there you get a deposit bonus too if you want to play a little more on FanDuel outside of that short, small, tiny competition.
Yeah, and make sure to sign up from that link, keepingkarlsson.com/FanDuel, so you get that sign up bonus. Okay, Brian. So yeah, let's run down all the things. We've got the party coming a week from Saturday, so that's October 14th at Watson's in Toronto. We'd love to meet you, hang out with some of our listeners, watch the Habs play the Leafs. Brian says that you get to either cheer for both of them like me, or none of them like him, or maybe somewhere in between. I wanted to say again, we've got the Patron Cast coming this Thursday. So for all the patrons, definitely make sure to tune in for that. If you're not a patron, you still can be. keepingkarlsson.com/patron. And I think that will do it. So why don't we play our outro music? And Brian, go ahead and read us the credits.
Sure. I'll also remind people, if you're craving more content, remember what Elon mentioned at the top of the show. You can find our bumbling but exciting and sometimes interesting live draft over at keepingkarlsson.com/live draft. And then you can get the results for it at keepingkarlsson.com/draft results. And of course, I'm speaking about the first tier, the top tier, the winner, the tier of which the winner will be the ultimate champion of the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. You can find out. You can hear about it. Anyway.
No, Brian, good point. And also, it wasn't like all bumbling. Like, it's not like a complete disaster. It's like 4 hours long. Maybe there's like 30 minutes of bumbling, but there's also a lot of really great analysis. I want to thank again Jeff Good for joining us. He gave some really great insight into auction draft strategies, and it was really interesting watching the dynamics of the draft and how at first there was really high bids, then there were some good discounts, and then went high. It was like really interesting to follow it along. Also, Brian was chiming in and a bunch about the other participants. Brian, freaking out as he always does. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, I don't want to give any more spoilers, so you can check that out. Brian, let's cue that outro music. Did I cue the outro music before?
I don't know.
We'll have to see when I edit that part, at least, to put in music. We'll see if I put it in there or if I'm going to put it now. But yeah, let's cue it and read us the credits.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including our newest ones, Pontus L., Josh S., Aaron S., Rasmus F., Mitch U, Paul T, Tyler H, Brandon L, Aaron K, Brian H, and Chris. You can find out more about the perks you can get as a patron over at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Wow, so many links for you to check out to do us a favor. But if you like the show, maybe you can do it.
Brian,
this show was researched.
Brian, you're shilling. We were done that, I thought we were done with talking about patrons. I just wanted you to read the credits.
This show was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dobber Prospects, Corsica, welcome back, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job, as always. Looking forward to doing this all again every week, starting next week, Monday. Remember, 8 p.m. You can always join us, keepingkarlsson.com/live. See you then.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Pow, 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 pow.
Wow.
Dina hates it when I do this. I do the reverse sometimes, and I shoot down, and I'm shooting at my feet, and then I pretend like I'm shooting at my feet, and I'm trying to move my feet away so that the bullets don't hit them. It's a whole little dance. It's a lot of fun. I recommend you guys try it out.
Okay.
All right. Okay. With that, thanks everyone for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you, chat.
Also, Brian, I'm starting to strongly consider, because don't forget, you didn't even prepare that much for this one. Maybe we were being silly. We're recording live shows. Why am I editing them? Maybe we should consider just doing it, trying to, not make mistakes and, save a lot of time. Something to consider. Let's try it again next week, and we'll discuss afterwards if it was good enough to not edit.
There are definitely 5 or 6 places in this episode where an edit could be used. I still think my idea to have to track the edit points so you can just get to them really quickly. You don't have to listen to the whole show again.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, okay, well, let's discuss it. But also, I feel like
we have on a piece of paper. You just take note.
But I'm also saying that even
46 minutes in.
Yeah, but these 5
Elon
points,
said crap.
These 5 edit points, do you think anyone actually cares? There's 5 times where you stumbled and you reset a thing. It's not where this isn't This American Life.
I would care. It should be This American Life.
I guess so.
Like, it should be a podcast that, like, you don't have to, like, stumble in your brain while listening to
Right.
it.
And it should be told in 3 parts. First part, rookies. First part.
We should consider that format just for one episode.
Yeah, okay. I'll bet you that all the listeners are going to say they don't care about the edit points, but maybe it's like the new listeners coming in. You know, you guys are the hardcore joining us live, like with a day's notice. Obviously, you don't care. We really appreciate you the most.
And they know what the good edit sounds like. They made it through to this point because they heard how great the edit sounded. Now they don't care. But someone new, who are these amateurs?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian, I think Alex is right. You care because it's your own image of yourself. You want perfection. Okay, well, let's talk about this editing.
No, I know from experience, if I listen to a podcast and they're tripping over words and making mistakes, it's not fun.
Let's try to not to.
Well, we did, and we were mostly successful.
I think it was good. I think this is one of our best. I think the fact that I said at the beginning that we weren't going to edit made it the best. So I think if anything, I wish I just didn't tell you. Like, even if I do edit, I want to tell you that I won't edit. It's like how everyone says that I should tell you that the episodes start at 7:50 so that you'll actually be there on time.
I still won't be there on time. I know the truth.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye. Thank you.